my PDA autism looks like. Knowing I'm late, but not being able to start the next task. Demand of having to leave my home sets me in fight, flight, phone freeze mode. Stims instead of getting ready. Autism causes big struggles with transition, issues with working memory, insistence on sameness. Watches clock. Starts eating same food in designated separate bowls. Eating rice with hands makes me feel more connected to what I'm doing. Eating is a whole sensory experience. This might look like procrastination, but is actually an attempt to calm the PDA, so I can start getting ready. Sits in leaving home. Swing to calm nervous system.
That makes sense, as I also have ADHD, and ADHD and autism have a lot of overlapping symptoms, but are still different things. But let me share some of those overlapping symptoms with you, or how it interacts with each other. So one of the things that are both present in autism and ADHD is called executive dysfunction. Executive functioning skills are things like planning, organizing, prioritizing. Executive dysfunction shows up in difficulties with organization, time management, and planning. Issues with initiating tasks and the working memory load your brain can take, like in your computer, the RAM kind of thing. And as executive dysfunction is present in both conditions, it makes sense why so much overlaps. I do want to highlight the differences though, because many people are starting to think, and there's a false narrative spreading on the internet in general, that autism and ADHD are the same or part of the same thing, which they are not. They're still two separate things and conditions. So the differences are, for example, in autism. Autistic people struggle with reading, interpreting, and understanding social cues. And because the social cues and the rules of how I'm saying rules on purpose because that's how I was able to learn certain social rules, by actually learning what's wrong and what's right in which situation sometimes. But the ever-changing horrible thing for autistic people is that those rules always change, because every social interaction is so different from the other one, and from one sentence to the next, that is really hard to learn one set of rules and apply it to all. Important thing is that also the reason why something is happening always shows what is the thing that is causing, what is the condition that is causing me to act in this way right now, or why my brain responds in this way in this situation. For example, with autism, a lot of the whys behind it is because my brain needs predictability, because my brain wants to understand, because this is too much input and it's just really overwhelming and it's messing up my whole processing in my brain, and it's just too much. The PDA autism that I'm referring to in the video that this comment was left under part looks at what is behind the behavior. Behind the stimming is that actually, okay, the demand of having to leave the house because there's an appointment, that is what's setting me in this fight, flight, freeze mode in that instance. And that's why I then sometimes go into some kind of, I don't want to say paralysis because it's not the same as ADHD paralysis, but into the stimming and trying to do things to calm myself down, even unconsciously. It's not even consciously so much that happens all the time. But why am I avoiding the demand of leaving home? Because the demand of leaving home comes with many in-between steps. You could argue that executing those steps triggers my ADHD, and therefore, because the ADHD impacts on my ability, how well or not I'm able to execute those steps. But the underlying thing is that the PDA was triggered, and PDA stands for pathological demand avoidance. A simple way to explain it is a persistent drive for autonomy, but an even better way to explain it is a fear and angst of demands. Demands set your brain instantly. When you have PDA, it sets your brain into fight, flight, freeze, fight mode. And it can be triggered by demands from the outside, inside. Perceived demands, anything. For example, when you feel hungry, that demand can then stop you, your whole body and your whole being, from being able to make yourself food, because that is perceived demand, and then it just offsets the PDA. And what the autism parts are, I think I explained that in the video in the blue text specifically. I mean, not only, also in the yellow, but mostly in the blue text, because then the troubles with task switching is a very autistic thing, for example, and issues with transitions, and also the knowing and transition is coming already causes a kind of anxiety, and of course it's one brain, so everything is connected. But as we have these certain understandings of these conditions, I'm trying to trickle it up and boil it down so we can all get a better understanding of what brains with these conditions go through, look like, and why it is how it is. I consider myself neuro-affirming, neurodivergency affirming, although I do rely a lot on medical knowledge and also talk in terms of certain medical structures and knowledge when I talk about these things. But just to reiterate why, I have a special interest in the DSM-5, TR, the updated one, and as well the old ones, TR and ICD-11, those diagnostic manuals, because that is something that really helped me make sense of the world and myself a lot. And it's one of my special interests, so I'm always going to view autism and ADHD through a kind of, I don't want to say medical lens, because I am not a medical professional, but I like having language to describe things. And of course I mix it and remix it with what people from our community say, in order to then form my own sentences of what I want to say about these conditions.